This is episode 86, Straight Up Chat with the Man Whisperer, Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz. Hey everybody, it's Paul here. I hope you're all wonderful. Welcome to 86 with the Man Whisperer. This is Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz. Kenny came from dramatic beginnings, death threats, refugee camps, paternal abandonment, maternal enmeshment, childhood mental health issues and racism. He moved to London, became an absolute adrenaline junkie with tight deadlines, extreme sports, anything that distracted him from the pain and emptiness that he held. Usually before I record an interview, I'll have a pre-recording chat with the guest. And that's exactly what I did with Kenny this time round, but actually what we ended up doing is just getting right into it. And we got into this slightly deeper conversation than expected in that pre-interview chat. So I decided just to keep it in there and just drop us straight into that chat as we got started. I was really pleased with this interview. I think Kenny is a wonderful individual, wonderful human, doing amazing things, and a very well-read, insightful individual. So Kenny, if you're listening, thank you so much for joining me. Oh, and guys, don't forget you can follow along on our show notes. That's by going to themanbits.com/86. As some of the content of this interview is sensitive, it's discussion about mental health, there's some discussion about suicide and trauma. I'd like to just remind you that anything you hear on this show is anecdotal, it's not professional advice, and if you do need support, please seek help from a professional or go to your GP. And if you need to call anyone for support, there are phone numbers on our website, themanbits.com/support. If you feel that you are struggling, you need support, or you know somebody who does, head over to themanbits.com/support. Okay, here we go with my interview with the Man Whisperer, Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz. The show is called the Man Bits podcast, and nice play on words, but it's also that there's a lot to men. Men are, as one of my previous guests said, men are polyphrenic, so there's lots of parts to men. And content-wise, it's mental wellness, physical health, and financial wealth. When I think I saw a YouTube video of you, and then I just went on a Kenny binge, and I watched heaps of your stuff, and I really enjoy it.
Thank you. It's getting much dodgier because when is it? I think next week I'm doing a group. There's a respected newspaper called The Guardian. So they're filming a men's group about mental health and suicide. And I'm astounded at how many of the blokes I work with they want to talk about it on stage, on video, to pass it on so other people don't need to go through that. But the dodginess starts next year because Channel 4, I did a men's group about men and porn because it's 25 years of porn or online porn or something.
Right.
I'm kind of getting on the edge and taking risks because it's important. And as far as maybe I should save this for the interview, but as far as I'm concerned, Man Bits run us. And if it's not the phantom erection, I once did a series of T-shirts that said, owning a penis is like being chained to a madman. And very often, for a lot of people, it is. And it's like all the blood or power or whatever is given to this beast that takes over. And this poor little bloke's trying to keep up with it. And that's kind of one thing that I have talked about is owning your penis so your penis doesn't own you. Owning your power. Owning and holding your space so you can direct it. But the most important part, I'd say, is men know themselves. They get to know why and what and how and everything else. Then they need to live differently. And this is probably the most important bit that I do, is they get to know their inner bits. They get to know the protector that's been controlling them to keep them safe, the pusher that's been making them feel bad. They get to finally meet, for some of them, the man inside that's been trying to emerge, but no one's listening. They get the child, and then it's like getting your hand on the volume control and rebalancing it so things actually start to work. So working with the different parts of the man, for me, is the inner key. That is so where it's at.
I love that. And you know what? I'll actually probably just edit that in because that's a good piece of gold right there.
Ah, brilliant.
So, Kenny, the Man Whisperer, break this down for us. What do you do?
Well, The Man Whisperer was a funny one that I did not expect. So I'll see if I can cut a long story short. 16 years ago, I came back. I lived abroad for a while. I lived in Sydney for 2.5 years, and I travelled for about 5 years. Came back to the UK, and I thought, what's happened to my friends? All my male friends were like distracted with sex and drugs, alcohol and power, money, how they look, what they've, and it was like, what is this? I needed to be met at some depth. So I got I think it was about between 12 and 18 of my friends into the big lounge that I had. And I said, right, I don't know what one is, but we're starting a men's group because I need to be met elsewhere. And I'll come raving with you. I'll come doing other stuff with you, but that's not enough. I need to be met at some depth. So that was 16 years ago. And people heard about it, and it's grown and it's grown. And I run probably about a dozen men's groups a month, including training people to run their own men's groups. And it's been quietly ticking over in the background, and it's been great. It's met my needs. It's met a lot of other people's needs. It saved a few lives, and it saved lots of marbles, because blokes, I find, tend to isolate, think far too much, try and fix things. And for me, I was speaking to an author called Johann Hari, who wrote a book on mental health. And he said, well, the thing about men's groups is it's social medicine. And connecting with someone else helps me to connect with myself, helps me to get out of my head. So it's like this social medicine thing that I didn't mean to do has done so much good. And I'm thinking, well, this has got legs. And then out of the blue, I've done some press and a bit of TV and bits and bobs. Out of the blue, I got an email from a guy who works for Newsweek. Newsweek is this respected magazine. And I thought, oh my God, this is grown-up land. And he said, right, I want to check you out. I want to check out what you do. I want to come to a men's group and spend some time. So first I winced, and then I pretended I was cool. And we hung out. And he came to a men's group and everything. And then he said, well, I'm writing a cover story article for Newsweek about men and mental health and suicide. So I thought, perfect, brilliant. And then the article came out, and it was kind of okay. He emailed me and said, well, actually, in a few days, we're releasing a book, and I've written a chapter about you. And it's like, oh, my God, where did that come from? And he called me the Man Whisperer. And I thought, man, that's smart. Why didn't I think of that? But then I kind of thought, if I did think of that, probably would have not had the audacity to even use it. But if someone else says it, then it works.
What's one of the things that got you involved in this work? What is it that interests you about working with men?
It's and I can speak for myself, the addiction to the voices in my head and trying to fix everything and spin all the plates and make sure everyone's happy. And the little boy in me, that's one part that I've really needed to take care of, doesn't feel that anyone's angry at him or is going to be humiliated or abandoned or rejected, and that everyone likes everyone and everything's safe and I'm in control of the future, and so it goes on. So with this addiction to my head and to fixing things and to being safe, and for me, I'd say the part of me that is the man bit, that man bit is my protector. And my protector's job has been to protect me, make sure I'm safe, even if it's at the cost of my life, like living a good life. It's like the protector's job is to protect. And I realized that actually it was, I phoned my mother up. Well, I phoned my mother up quite a lot, but on Refugee Day, I phoned my mother up. I think it's the 29th of October. And I phoned her up and I said, Happy Refugee Day, because we're refugees from Uganda and we ought to have died. We had lots of different nasty things happen. The Secret Service, we were on their wanted list and all of that. We had to go into hiding. So I said, Happy Refugee Day. And she responded quite calmly. And she said, we've survived. And that must have been about less than 10 years ago. And suddenly I was sitting with my mother thinking, oh my God, we've survived. I can stop now. I can stop surviving. I can stop these autopilot. This is what to do. This is how to survive. It's like, I've survived. And that is another thing that I just love to pass on to men, whether it's in the men's groups or working privately, is which part of you is still in the trenches or still on the battlefield or still in the war zone, or is your protector forcing you to come from there because he knows how to attract trouble to shoot. If the protector's job is to protect, then attract stuff to protect from. And the poor little human being is totally distracted from living a life because it's all about the usual protection. So, yeah, those are some of the main bits that I really work with to kind of, it's almost like whispering in a strange way. It's not fixing, it's not telling, it's kind of asking questions. So blokes go, actually, yeah, you're right, here and now. Or I can't be in control of the future. It doesn't make sense. Or, yeah, that happened in the past. It's not happening now unless I force it to happen now.
You mentioned something right at the beginning there where you said you gathered all your friends, Thrive Radio friends, in a room about 16 years ago, and you've got quite youthful looks, Kenny, so I'm thinking that you were quite young when you did that. And so it must have been, it's quite insightful of someone who's in their youth to have that in mind, saying, I need my needs fulfilled, like to go a bit deeper and not just the superficial. So, I mean, what was life like growing up in, say, Uganda, and to drive that kind of maturity in a young person?
I do look good for my age. I'm 54.
Bloody hell.
So I was in my early to mid 30s when I decided, let's do this men's group thing. Previous to that, about 25 years ago, I started running kind of personal development groups in Sydney because it crossed my mind. I knew lots of people that wanted to hang out, and it seemed efficient to get them together.
Bring them to you.
Exactly. And I kicked that off in a cafe in Mosman in Sydney. And we had a speaker, we ate together, we had a short meditation, stuff like that. And I guess in Africa, I was brought up in wonderful community. So my family, my parents were born in Uganda and Kenya. My grandparents are from Goa. So I was brought up very old-fashioned, kind of Victorian Portuguese, nice Catholic boy in a huge community, meaning we had loads of friends. My family would go to church together, go fishing together, go dancing together, and it was kind of old-fashioned, decent, lovely. It was a bit like grown-up Huckleberry Finn, I guess. So I was just used to community. And then when the chips were down, we had to disconnect ourselves from pretty much everyone we knew because our phones were tapped, we were being followed, and we were getting higher and higher up the death list. My father knew a guy in the Secret Service. So we kind of vaguely knew where we stood. And we were totally, suddenly on our own, not knowing who's gone where, who survived or what's happening. And for years, it was really weird. My parents would greet their friends with, "Oh my God, you're alive," rather than "How nice to see you." It was just crazy. So we fled Africa. We went into hiding after death threats and things like that. We fled Africa. My father was sent to, it's really weird. I can talk about it so easily and then suddenly I get a lump in my throat and I have to drink something. My father was smuggled to Italy when they were waiting to pick him up to, I guess, dispose of him. And we were sent to the UK. We had British passports. And at 7, my father said to me, "You may never see me again. You are now the head of the family. Take care of your mother and brother." And I was on. And it was hell. Refugee camp. We didn't really speak any of the Indian languages. We didn't know what was going on. People were in real trauma after what they'd been through, what they'd seen, what had been done to them, everything they lost. And we were these like nice little Catholic people wondering what's going on, feeling guilty, not quite sure what. So then my father showed up quite a few months later, he got busy in Italy. He ran 3 refugee camps, and got all that. It's interesting because we had the Indians and we didn't know what was going on. Meanwhile, he gathered all the different kind of tribes, for want of a better word, of Indians, and kind of set up a committee of men who can be representative of their lot. So we could all, or they could all work together. And he realized that the common language that they all had was Swahili. So I guess similar to me in a strange way is like find the common ground and the needs. And for me, the difference between a boy and a man is boys compete and need to dominate and, are quite paranoid of what other people think, where men can collaborate. They can include the female in them and collaborate and hold a space irrespective of what's going on and allow goodness to happen and allow so-called badness to shift. So the badness that needed shifting, one of the things in his refugee camp was the guys who were running the refugee camp decided to pocket a lot of money. So the food and tobacco rations went down. And my father organized a, what do you call it? A kind of starvation binge. What do you call those things where people stop eating? A kind of protest. To do that in a refugee camp in Italy with all these different tribes of people and to stand up for themselves, I think that's huge. So, cut a long story short, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I've got something in my blood.
And so did your father end up moving back to the UK to live with you?
When he came to the UK, we moved to his refugee camp, which was not as bad, but it was pretty crap, to be honest. And then we moved to a small town in Wales where it was filled with the people that we were used to from Africa, Catholics. So it was the crossing to Ireland, so Irish, Welsh, English, Italian, etc. And again, I mean, now we're poverty stricken. We've never cooked, we've never cleaned, we've never shopped, we don't know how to light a fire, we don't know anything because we were taken care of in Africa. And the neighbours took care of us and showed us what to do, how to do it. Our next door neighbours, we were going to move down the road to a house in better repair because we were housed in a council house. And they said, no, we don't want you to move. We want you to be our neighbours. And they redecorated the house. So in a way, I have come from such goodness and such community that maybe the things that other people would think, oh, I'm too shy or no one will come. It's just like, well, these are humans. And, what did I need? And what do other people need? There's nothing to think about. So I guess I've just got on with it. And I have so had doubts because with all of this drama and trauma, I had various mental health issues, obviously post-traumatic stress disorder, but I had obsessive compulsive disorder. I had Tourette's. I was twitching and grunting. Trichomania, where I'd poke myself, pull my hair, pick at myself. I had eating disorders. I'd starve and binge. I was a right basket case in many ways, but it was my dirty little secret. And if it wasn't so I must have been 7 or 8 when we moved to Wales, then I just thought, these people being my parents, and this is typical about thinking too much, these people need a shot of life, of surviving. So if they've got one less mouth to feed, it might be easier for them. So at that age, I was logically thinking already about suicide because it was almost like they need a chance. And I guess my mother said this to me, if she didn't have kids to take care of, she might have gone bonkers. And I kind of felt in a way the same. It's like, no, we need to survive this and I can contribute here. So rather than the logic of my head, it was like, what am I doing disconnecting, going in my head? And I've had it later on in my life and I'm thinking, what am I doing being a do-gooder? Surely I should be more of a rat and chase the money like so many other people are and, get a bigger house and, all that nonsense. And part of my thoughts have been, I can't do that. Stuff happened to me in my life to remind me and surely to show me what I could put right, because that shouldn't happen to people. So there are times when I've been in my head thinking, how am I going to fix this? I'm out of control. How am I going to pay all my bills? How am I going to make for a secure future? It could be just something as stupid as, how am I going to get on top of my emails? There must be a lot of people there who are really angry at me. And it's this figuring out, being owned by my mind that has taken me to places of, if I just happen to slip in front of this train that's coming, then it's all over. And looking behind that, that's almost like a need to be in control. And if I can't control everything that's going on in my life, which would be, for an ex-OCD ideal, but if I can't control all of this, and of course I can't, then surely the way to solve the problem or stop my head from going or be at peace is simply gently to remove myself from the situation. Now, if that is what overthinking does, then that bit needs its volume turned down and this bit needs to connect more and get real, basically.
You talk about that, let's call it the rabbit hole of thought, where the amygdala just overtakes the brain and just floods it with emotion and deep thought. And it takes you in directions you would very quickly, you would never expect. And so you filled, as you spoke about, you filled the void, I guess, with adrenaline. You took on a bit of a path of adrenaline junkie to fill that gap.
I wonder whether that's true or whether it might be the other side, that somehow my body was addicted to adrenaline. And when it had adrenaline, strangely, it felt safe because I'm on the battlefield and I'm pretending to know which battle I'm fighting rather than admitting that I'm out of control and life is out of control. So I wonder whether my body was used to that, my psyche or my protector was used to attracting that, and then I would make stories up to justify or logicalize that. And maybe this is what mindfulness is all about. But I think as I changed myself on the inside, whether it's my attitude or my perspective or just breathe enough to get out of my head, then everything can change. And I kind of, this was totally all my dirty little secret. And as a family, we dare not speak about what's going on for us, because if one cracks, then we might all crack and then we may not survive. So it was very much on the edge. And it took me a long time to kind of work out in my own mind what was going on and to sort it out. And the one thing that slipped, I mean, a few people noticed with the OCD, with the compulsive washing and checking and things in order, etc., which was things were so out of order and out of control on the inside that it was almost like doing it on the outside. But the bit that slipped was the Tourette's, the twitching and the grunting and stuff like that was like an overflow, and people could see that. And I needed to be fine and take care of other people. And it became an addiction when I was older, or maybe just a way of being of, I give and I take care, but I didn't know how to receive and be in the flow of things. That was too vulnerable. It was too maybe even disposable somehow. I don't know. But what I learned to do, I learned that when I find I'm lost in space, in my head, figuring something, whatever, I take a deep breath in without even thinking to the end of the sentence. I take a deep breath in, and as I breathe in, I get into my body and out of my head, and I think, thank you for reminding me who I used to be. And I used to be a thinking addict. And as I breathe out, I take part in what's in front of me. And that's how I flip it. It's not working something out or finding the bogeyman so I can slay the dragon and set myself free. It doesn't work that way. It's in this moment here and now. So I've learned to adjust that. And sometimes it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, it might be something wants to show up in my life. And if it really doesn't work, then in a split second, follow the breath, follow the feeling, and I'll be at the scene of the crime. And the scene of the crime could be a moment of something happening. It's like breath or the follow the emotion. It takes you straight back there rather than, okay, let me write a list of everything that's gone wrong and work through it one by one. Now, does that sound like fun or productive, like Distraction City?
What you focus on, you get more of. So if you're writing down everything that's gone wrong, you sort of, why is my life not working for me? Well, your brain's going to go looking for why.
And it's like giving more energy to what I want to grow rather than feeding what I want to go. And I know that as I can be very greedy with life. And I wouldn't say it's, fame and fortune. It's more about living a full life, maybe living a little bit too much on the edge because that's where I come alive and changing things. And as I want more, then stuff will come up from my past saying, okay, release me. Parts, because then you can be more or you can share more or you can get more. But the more I want, the more I need to release. So it's like breathe to where it takes me. That's the bit that needs attention. That's the next man bit that says, right, now you're ready to set me free. And if you're not, that's fine, because life then knows where to meet you, because I believe that life won't give me more than I can deal with.
You're listening to Straight Up Chats with the Man Bits podcast.
This next section is called the middle bits, Kenny, and it's an opportunity for me to throw some out-of-the-box questions at you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What's your number one tip for a fulfilled life?
For me, I would say it's a change in perspective. If I'm not fulfilled, then I'm distracted. And sometimes it's easier for me to get back here and now. There's the thank you for reminding me who I used to be thing, but it's connecting with someone else. Someone that I love or someone that I care about or want to be like. Connecting with that someone else brings that part in me alive. And that can so help to so easily change my perspective. But I've got the power and I can also allow the distraction.
Is there a particular coach, mentor, or a person who's inspired you along the way that you could talk about that comes to mind? I
met Dan Millman the other day. And he is a really excellent guy. I've been to a couple of workshops. I'd never actually met him and, we hung out a little bit. And he's been great. And, I am 54. So the books I read from the old days, I guess in a way shaped me. And Dan Millman's Peaceful Warrior. And then his more recent book with numerology, The Life We Were Born to Live, impeccable. And then there are people like Richard Bach, who I've never met, who wrote a load of books, even the early stuff of Stuart Wilde. So those were kind of my 80s people. And then people that I've known, it could be anyone from, do you know what? The men who come to my men's groups and watching them show up and be real and change, that's where it's at. They don't have to be famous or made lots of money or anything. It's the ones that are present, take part in life and shift. After Catholicism, I got into Theosophy, and I really like the work of Blavatsky, Helena Blavatsky, just helped put so many pieces of the puzzle together. Same with Hilarion, one of the masters. So I've done the esoteric stuff, I've done the light stuff, and I've explored. And I guess the bottom line is, who's living it? They're the ones who inspire me.
That's a great answer.
Why, thank you.
Is there a lesson that you've learned since school that should or isn't taught in school?
Wow, what a great question. What should have been taught in school? Do you know, I find that most of my private clients went to the schools, Harrow, Eton, etc., where they are taught to be world leaders, business leaders, bishops, politicians. It's big. It's very, very big. And sadly, a lot of them have been disconnected from their hearts because it's abandonment into care, so to speak, and then keep the boys busy, because if they're busy, they're distracted from their feelings and they just keep bricking over their feelings. So there's that side of education, and then there's my education in Wales, where we were bred to basically have quite basic jobs, or work on the family farm, or maybe the local factory, but there was one and it got closed down a long time ago anyway. So it's like who could I be? And I think what needs to be taught in school is be you and allow it to change. You don't have to be the boss or some sort of a leader to be okay, because that can be very lonely and cause a lot of, what do they call it, imposter syndrome. You don't have to be small and surviving. You could be whoever you want to be. And the connection of the people that I had in school and the intimacy of it was wonderful. And what the poor rich boys are starved of. And I find that it's the very rich who can often present themselves to me as pointless and purposeless, and the very poor who can present themselves as poverty-stricken. They're the two extremes that think, I can't do this anymore, it hurts too much, and I'm considering suicide. Isn't that amazing? Where if in school it's who are you and what might happen and what's your journey going to be, rather than what are you going to be when you grow up? No, you should be this and this and this and make money and make us proud. No, this is from am I and handing power over to others to I am, and entering into the question of who am I and living a life of wonder. God, where did that come from? Even I like that answer.
That could have been turned into a song, I think. Two questions in one, really. What is it that really throws men off track? Obviously, there's this need to win, this need to be a leader that comes through conditioning. But how do they end up feeling so isolated, or in a place that there's no purpose and no one they can reach out to? Is it? I mean, there's a word that came up in another interview previously, ego death, which apparently is one of our deepest fears. So, do you think that plays a part here?
I'd say this is, again, the boy bit and the man bit. And the boy bit needs to be part of the tribe. It's one of the most important things. And sadly, so many men who are really ruled by the boy bits show up and say, what's wrong with me? And they need to be accepted and popular and I don't know, the smartest, the richest, the brightest, the biggest muscles, whatever it is. And it's all competitive and fear-based, where the man bit is self-accepting, includes the female, includes the feminine, and is okay to accept, be, take part, be in pain and allow pain to pass, witness other people's pain and hold them safe, rather than jumping into fix or jumping out or making it okay, and allow that to pass. So I would say it's being with and allowing that fearful boy to be taken care of. There is only one, much as I'm so into Batman, especially the original one, there is only one superhero, I believe, that is going to save me and take care of my little boy. And when Batman's distracted in Gotham City, it's going to be the man in me. And if I'm going to run around offering my little boy to women to mother, or men to be my big brother or my best friend or my father or whatever it is, then it's not going to happen. But if if the man in me basically says to the boy in me, it's okay, I'm here, I've got this, you don't need to be in the battlefield, then the boy is safe and the man can meet the world and respond, rather than sending the boy in to do a man's job, because all he's going to do is react, be protected by the protector bit, and then it's the same old Groundhog Day. I don't know if I answered the question or went off on a tangent.
No, I think you kind of answered it. I mean, because you talked about freeing yourself, and is that sort of freeing yourself from the boy into the man? Like the boy man becomes the man boy, then the man boy becomes the man. I mentioned ego death, which I think I'm only new to that term, but I would figure that it's sort of that letting go of the boy a little bit and allowing the man to come through.
I would say it's including all of the bits, including all the fear. Absolutely all of it needs to be included, but there needs to be like a central processing unit, i.e. the man who will delegate inside to, right, now I need protection, protector, it's you. Now I need to be soft and loving, so lover part, it's you. Now I need to be a rascal because it's playtime with the boys, so it's you. So that's delegating inside. But I would say the boy has a gap. So the man is like this, meeting life and able to respond. And it's very intimate, where the boy can't really do intimacy, it's separate. So it's like, here's the sacred spirit of the boy. And if he's abandoned or has been through something that hasn't been kind of healed or accepted, then he's in trauma. And here's life. And in between is the drama. And the drama will keep him safe and the protector doing his job. And it's all about survival.
As a coach, you say you ask the right questions to get the penny to drop. Can you maybe share a couple of those questions with us that might get somebody's penny dropping?
Wow, that's a good question. I generally ask why. It's not what's the problem or what do you want to happen or not want to happen. That's all there. But it's a bigger picture. So rather than, again, being in the middle of the drama, which so many people are used to, it's like, I have to be on this battlefield, I have to survive this, and people believe that that is life. It's a big step back, and it's like, why? And then from there, it's, what does this remind you of? Which might be follow the feeling. So people say that a man is very rarely angry or upset for the reason a person thinks he is. So if I'm furious at someone cutting me up, no, not that I drive, but if I drove, driving in front of me or something, then why would I get road rage? What is that? Which nerve has that pressed and where does that take me to? So for me, it's like it's being Columbo. Go to the scene of the crime and take care of that, because then this doesn't need to happen anymore. So what's really going on? What is life telling you needs to be released? So signs and temptations can be seen rather than just danger attractive. So it's really going into the bigger picture. So I guess my work's in two parts. The first part, for those that need to know, is they download from my website a personal discovery questionnaire, and they just fill in lots of bits. And then everything about them is out and in front of them, and they get to see the bigger picture. And from that, they get to see that very often it's the same old story, repeating and repeating with different people, but the same characters. So it's like, where did this story start? What do I believe about myself that's demanding this story to prove me right? So it's like taking a look at all of that, looking at all the characters and where they come from. And once all the information is there, and this is very male, is I'm not shifting unless I know everything. So it's fine. Once a man knows everything, it's right, okay, so now I know. Is it just going to go away? And that's when we deal with the different parts, the different man bits that need to have their volumes turned up or turned down, or be informed that the war is over, or be informed that if you work with that part, then things will work well. And then it really shifts. So it's almost like inner engineering or something. But yeah, I guess the answer to your question is be like Columbo.
You've touched on the stories there. When you go back and you look at the bigger picture, there's stories that we've created from whatever events from our past, right, from the boy, it seems, and you have to unlearn them. So, I mean, for me, I recognise this in me, as you were talking there, that I carried from relationship to relationship, and it was not just with partners, it was in friendships as well, and professional relationships, a lack of trust, and I couldn't work out where that was coming from. And I had to kind of really go back, and it took, lots of seminars and courses and self-development and all of that business to actually unwind it and go, okay, I see where the event may have triggered there. How has limiting stories played out for you in the past? Is there an example you could pull from?
Oh, totally. And this is purely from running for our lives. So, there was one night we had a phone call saying, we're going to come and kill you now. My aunt and uncle were with us. So the men searched the grounds. It was only the front and back veranda type thing. And then we went to theirs and we were in hiding. And then the number of times that we had toy walkie-talkies, one in our car and one in my aunt and uncle's car. And we talk about where we can hear gunfire, who's following us, which way to turn, are they taking us down that road to do something? So it was really hairy. People are going to kill us. Heavy shit, basically. So it was a cycle of from good life comes running for our lives. So for a lot of my life, I have been changing, doing well in a career, and things are good now, things are safe now. So suddenly I'd be spooked and I'd change career. So I've been in the music business, I've been in publishing, marketing and publicity, things that I love. But as soon as I did well enough, the spook would come up. Then I'd move house, I even moved country, but unconsciously I kept running and running and running. And that's the way it was. And interesting you say about the business partners and things like that. I had a pattern with most of my personal work, I'd say I've done with men, issues with men, because I was more of a mummy's boy, therefore elevated as one of the adults, shouldn't be like the men and better than the men, and responsible for the emotions of all the women. And it was quite unconscious for everyone. It was just almost like a family thing that generally happened. There are pluses and minuses with everything. So with that, I've naturally somehow attracted women because it was never an issue as a child. But my issues were with men. Am I now one of the boys? Do I want to be one of the boys? And considering my mental health issues, the OCD, etc., it's like boys are dirty, boys are, nah, stay away from me. So I had stuff to do with the boys. And also, as a little boy, I was quite an impeccable man. Even as an adult, other people saw me as a good man. But I didn't buy it. There was no space for me in this. And if I don't buy me, then it really doesn't matter if anyone else does. I need to respect myself and be true to myself. And then I started unlearning. And I explored for the first time the obsessive compulsive disorder, the Oedipal complex, and God knows everything else, just to kind of get the information, just to find out. So much of my work was with, and I've generally had amazing relationships with blokes, good friends. But even the good friends, it's like, how come I'm playing father replacement or big brother replacement or best friend replacement? Whether we were best friends or not, there was something going on. And again, it was the little boy pretending to be a man, taking part, because that's all I knew. The personality from need went into that. But what I found out, and what really shifted things, was it's fine to know the logical details.
That's interesting because that's the detail, that's the logic of the event. But what you're saying is that you take a story from that event and make it into something else.
What really matters is my experience. And that's not logical. As a child, what was my experience? What did I feel? What did I believe? Irrespective of the details, what do I feel happened? Because that's what I built on. That's where I came from. Not the real story. I was a child. I forget I was a child because there was no space for being a child. But it was my emotional story. And so much of my work is, and this is the most courageous part that men do when I believe they do their work, is that shift from being in control and surviving and being totally vulnerable. And death could happen. Death of the ego. Death of everything that's been built and held together. And that's for me where either with private clients or men's groups, that's where men are held as safe and accepted. And it doesn't necessarily have to be hippie type woo-woo or anything. It's just that feeling and knowing that whoever it is you are, or whoever it is you're pretending to be or learning to let go of being, this is the place to do it. And it's safe to make that change.
It's been a spectacular conversation, Kenny. And it's one of those that I would like to do a part B or something, because I feel there's so much more I'd like to unpack with you. How can people connect with you? How can people find out what you're up to, and what have you got coming up?
So to connect, themanwhisperer.co.uk is the most complicated, crappy website, I'm afraid, but it needs to be changed quite soon. I've been too busy to look at that, and it's difficult to see myself from the outside, but themanwhisperer.co.uk or mensgroups.co.uk. And from mensgroups.co.uk, you can download the ground rules and check-in round and watch a couple of videos, and you're ready to run a men's group, or at least start. But I run trainings for that. You don't need to do the trainings. Get going. Coming up, I have got so much good stuff coming up from, I filmed a documentary with Channel 4 about men and porn, because it's 25 years of porn. So I might die in front of millions of people if Channel 4 decide to edit it that way. I think it's next month I'm filming a documentary for The Guardian. And that's about men and mental health and suicide. And, these are the men who were willing to show up and tell the truth about their lives and their relationship to these things. Like, hats off. It's them, us, who change the world and show up. There's another cheeky thing that I've started doing. So my brand is Men Camp, Men Rocco when we went to Morocco. Men facilitate to facilitate groups. So I've launched Men Flirt, and Men Flirt's doing very well. And Men Flirt is not about flirting. It's about being the most authentic, irresistible you that you could possibly be. It's about showing up, and then men get videos while they're in conversation and getting feedback about how they come across. And it could be quite simply posture, tone, sitting front, sitting back, angle of head, anything. And Men Flirt is just suddenly phenomenal, because it's quickly changing people's lives. It's quickly letting them check in with where they're coming from. So I'm giving workshops on it. There's the Gentleman's Grooming Show. There are a couple of Huffingtons. Suddenly, it's like the world needs to know about men and mental health and being authentic. I never thought it would happen. Like, how cool is that?
Great stuff. That's a lot on your plate. Make sure you send us some of those links, because I know we've got most of them, but my VA will put them in our show notes. But yeah, please, any others, just flick them through and we'll make sure they're added for you as you create more and more and more. And Kenny, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been a right buzz. I'm so chuffed to meet you. And yeah, let's do part 2 at some stage.
Absolutely. Once the dust settles from me having a new human in the family.
Good luck with that. That is the biggest thing. Biggest thing. I'm so chuffed for you.
Thank you, Kenny. Yeah, look, stay connected.
For sure. Indeed. Yeah. That's my most favourite bit, man bit, I think. My connection bit.
What a great guy. What a great guy. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you so much. And thanks for listening. So the show notes, themanbits.com/86 has all of the resources and any links, websites and so on that we talked about today. I do encourage you to go and check out the work that Kenny's doing. And if you are looking for a coach in men's wellness, then he's the guy to go to. He is the Man Whisperer. So we just recently had some really big news. Our daughter was born last week. What an event. It was life-changing, of course. Life is changed as we know it. And we were both excited. Both Pascal and I are really excited about what's to come. This show will continue through to the end of January when I hit episode 100. And we'll announce what's coming up for us in 2019. I'm super excited about that. So stick around, check out our Sunday episode, our bonus episode. And then next week, we're talking about motivation with Mark Terrell, an expert in motivation. So that's episode 88, and I'll see you next week. Have a great one.